This is the future. Evolution.
The Crossing Realms Conference launches September 19th and 20th and will dock in Richmond, Missouri. This is already being called the event of the year, folks. With an unprecedented list of speakers and special guests, 2 days of cryptids, UFOs, and paranormal presentations, along with a celebrity-filled ghost hunt, meet and greet, gallery reading, vendors, and a film screening. This promises to be both educational and fun. Go to Eventbrite.com to secure your tickets and vendor slots before they are all abducted. They're going fast.
Yes, everybody, they are going fast. They are going fast. Welcome to Brunch with Bigfoot and Michiganrob. Got a great guest. Varla Ventura joins the show. Yes, we got a great show for you. A little different, but it's always intoxicating. It's always a great show. A lot of fun when Varla comes on. So thanks to Varla in advance. Thanks to each and every single one of you for subscribing to Bigfoot Michiganrob on YouTube. If you're new, please subscribe. Subscribe to Texas Front Porch, the Blinds and the Booze Paranormal Podcast. Monica Rollins, you can find her Our Paranormal World. Paranormal Paul Donnie Cho Says Stuff. And we'll all be at the conference 19th and 20th. So it's going to be a great event. Thanks for that in advance to everybody for coming on in. And for those of you that are coming in, I must thank you for buying my 2 books out there on Amazon. Bigfoot Michiganrob presents True Cryptid Encounters Book 1 and Book 2. Simply type Bigfoot Michiganrob in your Amazon browser and the books will appear for you. So thanks. Please leave a review. It does push book sales. Typically, I pin my books at the top of the chat, but for my lovely guest, Varla, I pinned her latest and greatest, which we're going to talk a little bit about today. It's pinned at the top, so go check out Varla. You can find all of her books on Amazon. The link for this particular book is pinned up top. Click on it and check it out, if you would. Don't forget the super chat's open. A great way to help support what we all do around here. You too, mateys, can become a BMR pirate. Arr. Join today. Join the many. Join the few. Depends on your point of view. And you know what you get? You get a picture of good old BMR sporting a bandana next to your name in the chat room. How about that? That's what you get. So thank you so much. Thanks in advance for everything, and I appreciate that. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and bring up my awesome guest, Varla.
Hello.
Hello, Varla.
Hello. Greetings.
Well, it's always great to see you. Greetings to you as well.
Thank you.
I always have to ask this, and this is going to kind of lead into what we're going to talk about. The weather in Minnesota. We're finally breaking here. We finally got 60-degree weather. Then it'll be 80 like in 2 weeks. How's it up there?
It's similar. Yeah, everything's finally just like bursting into blooms. You know, all the cherry trees and apple trees are blooming and tulips are starting to come out of the ground. So we're well into spring and it's been really gorgeous. A couple of rainy days, but really gorgeous. So I'm not complaining. It is supposed to get really hot this weekend. I'm not complaining. I'm ready for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
My tulips have, believe it or not, my tulips have bloomed and they're ready.
Yeah. Your zone that you grow, you know, your USDA growing zone is probably a couple lower than, or would be higher, a higher zone. I'm guessing you're probably 5 or maybe 6. Do you know?
I think it's 6, but I will tell you this. I'm glad you brought that up because, okay, my yard is pretty spacious. I love gardening. I have always a thriving vegetable garden. Okay. Then what I do is I buy flowers and I arrange them in the pots along my outside deck. But for the last 2 or 3 years, I've been trying to just grow some pretty cool looking perennials.
Mm-hmm.
And I can never get them to last a season. They don't come back. And I do a lot of research on this and look things up. I check my soil, even maybe I had bad soil, but really it's not bad because the garden is so fantastic. So my friend Monica, Paranormal World, she's an excellent gardener, and she's the same kind of. We have the same interests when it go with that, and she's going to help me out. And she's been doing some research on what I can plant because I really can't plant anything till maybe Memorial Weekend because
Yeah, same. Yeah.
at night it's still 48 degrees.
Yeah.
Nothing germinates,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, same.
yeah. So I'm looking forward to that once again. And it's kind of cool because I love gardening. I do it. I love the outdoors and making the yard look cool. And so yeah, I'm not a green thumb. I guess I can say I am with the garden, just not my flowers, which kind of leads us really into today's show because this is right up my alley. No, it's not Bigfoot or Dog Man. I gotta tell you what, there's things going on, right? With we're gonna talk about it. I'm just trying to find the book jacket here for you really quick. We're gonna talk a little bit about your book here. Enchanted Plants, a treasury of botanical folklore and magic, Varla Ventura. That's the jacket. Again, it's on Amazon, and the book link is pinned in this show. Check it out. Thank you for that. So, and there's right in.
Hardcover,
Yeah.
gilded edges, ribbon bookmarker,
Yeah. Oh, that is well.
full color illustrations inside. Let me find one for you.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, it's really, they did a lovely, lovely job with it.
Yeah.
There's the witch's garden.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
My
definitely,
favorite is the apple.
well, it's very bewitching. The apple.
I'm pleased with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
It
been
looks
a
great. I
delight.
can't wait for my copy because I will definitely, literally, I love reading. I don't read that often just because I'm so busy. I've got in this corner of my office area, there's about a stack of 20 books that either people sent to me or I purchased. Embarrassingly so, Varla, I've yet to open a cover, so I mean, it looks cool on
Yeah.
the bookshelf, but
Well, here's the great news. The Enchanted Plants, like many of my books, you can read it cover to cover if you'd like, but it's really kind of set up by the type of plant, and then it's organized by the type of garden that you might encounter in like fairy tales and folklore. So if you read it in succession, you'll kind of go on that journey from garden to garden, but you also can just read it a little bit at a time, like each shorter chapter. I love books like that. It's especially books that give you like a lot of information. It's not, there's a narrative in there, but you can also just kind of jump around. And I enjoy reading that way myself. So that's kind of how the book is organized. So even if you don't read it cover to cover, you might say, oh, let me read about foxglove today. I love foxglove.
yeah, that is great. I do like those like short stories or broken down where it's not like one narrative throughout as your typical novel, where
Yeah,
you just
yeah. It doesn't
same
require
character.
as much concentration. And it also allows you, like, I think it's great to be able to take in some of that information and just think about it before you move on to the next thing. So,
Yeah. So what we've talked about, you've been on the show 5-6 times. We cover every gamut of the strange phenomena. What was your passion behind finally coming out with this book?
well, I've always been a plant person. I kind of started my working career working in retail nurseries and doing landscaping and working in flower shops. And then as a teenager, I studied a lot of herbalism and I'm just a consumer of plant books in general.
Mm-hmm.
So in many ways, I've been researching this for like 20 years. Took me about 5 years to write from, beginning to end.
How many years? You say
I got the idea about 5 years ago.
Okay.
And kind of started compiling it. And so what happened is I think it was like 2020 and I was reading Grimm's fairy tale because,
Of course.
of course, as one does, it's COVID times, tapping the old bookshelf. And I started just paying attention to the different plants that were mentioned in these different stories. And then I thought, wouldn't it be cool to have a book that explores these fairy tales but through the lens of the plants, so that in the end, each story that I included and each plant that I chose, without that plant, the story would be very different. So once I had that criteria, I was able, because there's lore about every plant. There's lore about every plant. Every plant has a story behind it. So I was able to kind of narrow it down by finding stories or plants that had a great deal of lore, so that I could either retell some of those tales, which was a lot of fun to like rewrite some of those fairy tales, or excerpt directly from an old story. Like there's a section from Alice in Wonderland in there.
Okay.
And there's a section from Dracula in there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
talk a little bit about these enchanted plants, mysterious gardens. There's something to it, you know. I said this a couple times over the years that I've been finding that, you know, when you're out in the forest reminds me of today's modern internet. You know how the internet is all these different networks.
Lots of noise.
Yes. And these plants, trees, flowers, what have you, they communicate, don't they, with each other?
Yes. And actually they communicate with us. So that's even better. That's actually kind of start the book out saying, you know, as long as I can remember, I've been able to hear plants, sort of the way some people can hear ghosts, or, you know, people have different gifts. And I know that that's a strange thing to say, but it's actually very true. I've had a very intuitive relationship with plants since I was a child, and have many, many visceral early childhood memories that are built around a specific plant and a plant memory. You know, whether it was like lemons from my grandmother's garden, or an herb that I gathered with my mom, or things like that. So it is, there's a level of communication that, and I don't think you have to have that to be a plant person, or to work with plants, or be a really, you know, have a green thumb, or be a good gardener. I mean, there's a couple of plants that really I don't like, and they don't like me. There's a couple of plants that I like, but they don't like me. And I every single time I've got a office full, you know, just hit a plant there. I've got an office full of plants. I've got a humidifier going all the time. I've got perfect lighting, all of the things, but there's just a few plants that just, we don't connect. And we've just agreed to disagree, right? It's like people. It's just like, you know what? No, it's not working.
You know, it's funny because I started doing this a couple of years ago. Now, I'm pretty good with the vegetable garden. I said, like, my perennial garden is just every year it's a trial and error thing.
It's an annual garden.
Yes, it is. I said, am I planting annuals? Because, you know, it's weird, because annual to me is 12 months out. Well, they bloom every spring, summer, right? But it's the perennial. But I knew that, but I was just convinced the words. So the one thing that I can't grow are tomato plants. I mean, I get them, they come in good, but that's the easiest thing. They grow like weeds, right? But I found myself literally, started this a couple of years ago, especially since I'm more involved in high strangeness. I started literally talking to my plants. I'm like I'm talking to you right now. Hey, buddy, how you doing? Gals, guys, whatever, you know.
Give us some fruit.
And I, you know, showing them some love and literally talking to them. In fact, I was kind of embarrassed because my neighbor across the way saw me talking to the garden. Rob, who the hell are you talking to?
The garden.
Oh, obviously. The garden, man. And I got to tell you, and I'm not just saying this to have a entertaining show. It seems like when I showed them love verbally, it seemed like, damn, this garden started to perk up a little bit. And I was thinking, was that because of me, or was it just some, you know, coincidence, right?
Well, I think there's like two parts to it, you know, because there's been all kinds of scientific studies of, like, you know, hooking things up to plants, and plants making certain noises or having responses when you like tear a leaf. Or like, I remember in like science class, we'd have plants that we'd play classical music to, and then we'd have plants that we'd play, you know, heavy metal to, and we'd measure the difference. So I think there's that. And then the other part of it is that by having those conversations, you're actually sort of, whether you're totally conscious of it or not, you're paying a lot more attention to that plant. So therefore you're chatting with it, but you're also, you're kind of like noticing, oh, maybe there's an aphid here, or this, let's get these yellow leaves off. We like to have our hands busy. Gardeners love to have our hands busy at all times, right? So there's never a dull moment in a garden. There's always something to do. And so you might be, picking off the dead leaves and kind of, deadheading your flowers or whatever while you're having these conversations, and your plants also respond to that.
I do think they do. And I think that for me, even personally, it's a strange thing. But when I started, communicating, it makes me feel good too, for some reason, especially when you see the fruits of talking to them.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. And actually, recently, right before I was having a pretty major surgery, it was like the day before, and I drove down to the Como Park Conservatory, and I went and I sat in the Victorian Conservatory room. I was really stressed out, kind of in panic mode, really afraid. And I sat in this room, this like the beautiful glass dome above me, a fountain in front of me, and just all of these plants around me. And just like walking in there, I felt an immediate sense of calm. But I honestly sat on this bench for close to an hour, not move. And I'm kind of a mover.
Yeah.
And I didn't move. I just sat there and I just listened to the water, and I just took in all that oxygen. And, there's that tradition. They call it forest bathing, which is essentially walking through a forest, but walking very slowly and really kind of to take in all the sounds. We tend to let's go for a walk, and we try and get from point A to point B. And forest bathing is really more of a mindfulness practice as you go into a forest, and you're noticing the sounds, and you're not necessarily trying to achieve anything. You're trying to just observe what's around you. And the hardest part about it is slowing yourself down. Is that, it's like, oh, I just kind of want to keep going down the path and see what's next. And so it's that practice of just kind of bathing yourself in the natural world that can be really beneficial, even if it's just going into a artificial conservatory, an artificial forest. It's not an artificial forest, but it's an enclosed hot house, which is a great place to go in the winter, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
It is. Do you think that, because I've kind of found this, the more involved I've been with this, do you think that the plants take on the homeowner's personality, the gardener's personality? Because it seems like conveying this energy or whatever it is that you're expounding into the ground, and if you're very cheerful, it seems to me that you have a cheery looking garden or flower bed. And if you're one of these down the dumps type of people, you think they respond to that? Maybe sometimes you don't get growth in the garden simply because of the negative energy that someone might have.
I think so. Yep. I think the other thing is if you have a lot of negativity, you're also probably going to be really focused on that negativity and not as observant of the things that might need doing in the garden. But I have kind of a rule because, I lived in the San Francisco Bay Area for the majority of my gardening career. And if you want to feel good about yourself, garden in any coastal zone along California's coast. And you're like, whoop, I can grow anything.
Right.
But when I moved to Minnesota, that was a bit of a rude awakening because some of my favorite plants are subtropicals. So I tried to keep replanting some things. And then I just got to this point where I was like, if you can't make it through a zone 3 winter, I can't have you in my garden as a perennial. I will put annuals out just for pretty's sake,
Yeah.
But, and then there's certain plants that I've had a lot of success with, and other plants that they say they're okay for that. Me and roses, doesn't happen. We don't,
really?
I don't I can't do roses. I've tried. I've heard all of these really interesting techniques where you tip them over and bury them in the winter.
Mm.
And I need my plants to be hardier than that.
Yeah, well, for sure.
But I will baby along things like, if I've got a lovely arum or something, or a vampire lily, something that probably won't even make it through the winter indoors. I'll baby those things along, but I'm kind of tough on my garden. I kind of just like, you know what, you guys, I gotta endure the winter. So do you. But then those plants thrive so much. Then you get a little bit more experimental with different colors and different varieties, and and it gets expensive too if you have to replant your perennials every year,
Oh,
right?
well, yeah.
So now your perennials that you're replanting, are those in pots?
The ones that I'm going to purchase come in a
Like, do you
pot.
plant them into pots?
I take them out of the pot and plant them directly
Right into the ground. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I mean, the thing that helps my plants more than anything is that I have so I have lavender and rosemary that have both come back, and they should not be coming back in my zone. They can probably survive your zone, but not mine.
Mhm.
And but I have this maple tree in my front yard, and it drops tons and tons and tons of leaves. And I literally put like 2 feet of just leaf. I don't even mulch it up. I just dump the leaves on all my beds in
Okay.
like mid-October, and like, so that to the point where you can't even see the plant anymore. It just looks like, I mean, like 2 feet
It's just
deep.
covered by leaves.
Yeah, it's free. Comes right off my tree. I don't have to pay to have the city pick it up.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a win-win. And then I just pull those off around this time or a little bit earlier. And that has helped some of the plants that are a little bit more on the and then the other thing too is like, the directions make a huge difference. If it's your north facing garden, it gets colder in the winter.
Mhm.
South facing garden stays warmer even under the sun,
Well,
or even under the snow. So
Yeah, I live in southern exposure, so my entire backyard is 90% sun
yeah.
all the time.
Yeah. So that means your front yard is northern exposure.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do
Yeah.
much in the front other than some bushes around the porch and
Yeah.
cut the grass and keep it maintained. I mean, it looks nice, the grass, but the
I
back is
have
where
a
I do.
tremendous amount of luck with grasses, ornamental grasses.
Okay.
They're so hardy. They come back. They look beautiful. Some of them will like turn red in the fall, and then they grow pretty quickly, and you can divide them. So I find those to be like very, very satisfying, especially if it's like a hybrid of something that might be like a Michigan native.
Yeah.
If you can find like a hybrid that gets like, pink,
Mhm.
flowers or something on it, I like to mess around with that. So I'm not like a native gardener, but I'll look at like what might traditionally grow here, and then sort of branch off from that with something that has been hybridized to have maybe a, tricolor leaf or something.
Okay.
So
I'll definitely look into that.
yeah, you have to send me pictures.
Well, yeah. If I get it rolling, I'll send you I'll shoot you some pictures of what I got going on. It'll be in a month or two. But
Yep. Our gardens look great in August usually, right?
yeah, they do. And it's funny too, because the vegetable garden, it's like I'll plant that end of May. And it's like the thing is still going strong in September.
Yeah.
I mean, literally. One thing you did mention, I'll move on with something else about these gardens. I did, in fact, last couple of years, in my garden, I've left all the leaves. I've raked all the leaves too, because I heard that before, and I left them all in the garden. And as the snow comes, rain, the leaves, it kind of just becomes part of the ground, right? And so it probably provides good nutrients and things.
Yeah, it
Maybe I
does.
should do that along the fence line where I have trying to plant these flowers for at the end of this year, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
I also love vines. I'm like anything that vines. And I've had some, I mean, I have these two. So I moved here and went to and don't buy your plants at like Home Depot or
No, I go to
you
a
got to
nursery.
go to a nursery.
I do. Yeah.
And because I've done that, I've gotten the exact same plant from a nursery, and it cost $5 more. and put another one filled in with another one from Home Depot, and the Home Depot one doesn't survive.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. I mean, some of the growers are the same, so that's not always true. But yeah, it's kind of fun. I mean, it's a bit like cryptids or the paranormal in that it's like you're never fully done. You're never going to fully have all the answers. You're always going to be experimenting. But I went and purchased a couple of wisteria vines, which are just absolutely beautiful. And I grew wisteria all the time when I lived in San Francisco. Thrives there. So I just put them in my along this arbor next to my house. Just, well, these are at the nursery. They should be fine. And they have now really just exploded to the point where last year I had people pulling over and knocking on my door and saying, I didn't know wisteria grew here. What kind of wisteria are those? And I was like, I don't even know. They're just the kind I got at Bachman's. I mean, I don't remember.
For sure, the nursery. I've done the Home Depot. I've done the Lowe's. I usually get those though for the
like the annuals
for the deck, because they do last all year, and I take care of them, every day and such. What about?
Now I got to tell you something though, since we're just talking about general plants. Okay, so I just got an incredibly interesting plant, and I need to do a couple little videos. But there is now something called a glow-in-the-dark petunia.
Ooh.
I'm not kidding. They're kind of expensive right now. I had to do like a pre-order at my local nursery. I got an email about it. They're what they look like when you buy them are just white petunias. They just look like beautiful, kind of smaller flowered white petunias. Very attractive, trailing, just like a regular petunia. Which, by the way, petunias ward off aphids and some of the other like squash bugs and things like that. Okay. So they actually can be really beneficial to put in around your vegetable garden.
Right.
So anyway, and then what happens is they're bioluminescent. So they glow, like they literally glow. So the other night I came home, I had just gotten them, left them in the sun all day. I got home and my porch light was on. So I had to go and like turn the porch light off. And I think as the porch light was on, it messed with it a little bit. But several of them, I need to bring them inside into a dark room to really like show how they glow. They literally glow like, they're glow in the dark. It's absolutely amazing. Just glow in the dark petunias.
I'll have to look into that. That'd be extremely interesting.
They're pretty incredible. I've never heard. I mean, there are bioluminescent plants. You see that a lot in, especially in like the kingdom of fungi, like in the mushroom kingdom, you see like certain kinds of fungus that you'll be walking through the forest and you'll see something glowing. But somehow they used, and I've been researching like how did they do this? Because the website of the plant grower is pretty vague, it's just like, whatever. Yeah. They glow in the dark and it's been hybridized. And it's like, okay, well, how? Somehow they took that ability that a plant like a fungus has to be bioluminescent and bred it into these petunias, a very common, lovely flower that, it's just an annual. So it's a very expensive annual. But man, if you could have a glow in the dark plant, it's just like,
no, okay. I'll get with you.
You got to get one. Yeah, you got to get one.
Yeah, I'll have to. My head is thinking where to put it already. What can you talk today about? Maybe it's in the book or probably it is. What's the mysterious thing, because we all, being that we're like a paranormal show and such, right? What do you know about like the mystical gardens, or what about some of these that can maybe, what's like one of the mystifying, I don't know, folklore behind them? I mean, are they, because, we always talk about like the Fae and the Fairies around gardens, I've heard, and of course the elementals of the forest. Mm-hmm. Is there any relation with the paranormal or anything in your experiences?
Yeah. So in my book, I as I kind of mentioned, like I set it up so that you sort of go on this journey as you read from the beginning to the end. And instead of organizing it by just like, okay, alphabetical, all the plants that I like or whatever, and it's not even all the plants I like, it's just the ones that fit my criteria. I decided to organize it by the types of gardens that you might find in a fairy tale. So you start out the book in the Queen's Garden, And this is where you will find sort of like tulips and roses and apples and things that have been cultivated and were sort of like a treasured thing that you might have to serve to the queen. And once you finish that, you go around the corner to the cottage garden, and that's the vegetable garden and the herb garden that the cook grows. And then you continue on, and you kind of, go around the bend and the crooked path, and you end up behind the iron gates of the witch's garden. And that's where really the most mystical, probably the plants with the most sort of like mysticism behind them, because they're pretty much all poisonous. And any plant that's poisonous has a lot of magic and a lot of medicine. So any plant that can cause harm can also heal. And so that's pretty fascinating. And then, of course, after that, you go through gallivanting through the meadows, and then you end up in the forest. So I have a number of trees in my book. And then eventually you end up at the sea or the lakeside, and I have some aquatic plants in there. But when you get to the witch's garden, I mean, that is really the place where you find, one of my favorite plants is the foxglove. I just absolutely love the foxglove. And the foxglove, here, let me read you some of the names, the common names that foxglove goes by, because it's a pretty impressive list. And actually, even before you get to foxglove, another extremely mystical plant is aconite. That's also known as wolf's bane. This is the plant that has the ability to turn you into a werewolf, and is also thought in small doses might actually be an antidote to werewolfism. And it's said in Greek mythology, you had Cerberus, the three-headed dog that sort of guards the cave into the underworld. It's said that aconite sprouted from his spit, like he was frothing at the mouth, and his spittle fell into the ground, and aconite grew out of that. And so that's why it's always it has that strong association with dogs and with wolves. The medicine that's in it, and actually there's very many very similar sort of like they call them alkaloids that are in these plants that they're psychotropic. They cause hallucinations, they cause mania, they cause like total mayhem, death, vomiting, nausea, all kinds of things. But also have those same alkaloids have been used and synthesized since time immemorial as medicine. So the Greeks knew of this, right? Like Socrates poisoned himself with hemlock because he knew that hemlock would kill him. Hemlock has also been used in conjunction with some other herbs. The Greeks used to use that as anesthesia to knock someone out. If you don't give them too much and you mix it with other things, you can knock someone out. This is not a recipe, mind you. This is just the mythology of it. But you can in the medical history of it, you can knock someone out, and that will allow you to perform surgery on them without it causing the trauma. But I want to get to foxglove because that has so many lovely connections with the fairy world. Okay, I could probably just tell you. I don't even know why I'm looking it up. So it's called foxglove. It's called fairy glove. It's called witch's thimble. It's called fairy cap. It's called witch's cap, and I think also there's another fairy bells. That's the other name. And foxglove has, one of the reasons it's called foxglove, this is digitalis purpurea. That's the most common one. That's the purple one. Most gardeners love, foxglove's absolutely beautiful. It's a hardy plant, but it is toxic. All parts of it are toxic. So you don't want your animals to eat it. And it's actually derived from foxglove, from digitalis, is a medicine called digoxin or digitoxin. And this is used to this day as a treatment for heart palpitations, heart attacks, and other heart ailments. Today we have a synthesized version of this, but it's from foxglove.
Okay.
And actually during World War II, there was a huge shortage of this very vital medicine. Like, this is a medicine you take when you feel like you're going to have a heart attack, and it'll help regulate your system. During World War II, most of the medicine at that time, a large amount of the medicine at that time was produced in Germany. The Germans have a long history of homeopathy and a long medical history. Well, for obvious reasons, right? You couldn't get medicine from Germany. So in Britain, they formed this thing called the British Vegetable Drug Committee. And it was formed by the government, the British government, and they basically had like scientists and doctors working on one end, and they got the entire population of the island to start growing and harvesting foxglove. And basically, they had all the women and children and elderly growing this poisonous plant, harvesting it, and bringing it to a processing plant. And they were able to make enough of a supply of this medicine that there was not a shortage of it during World War II in England. So kind of miraculous. So that's its like medical history. The reason it's called foxglove is because it's said foxglove is like highly associated with fairies. That's where it gets the name fairy cap and fairy bell. It's said when a foxglove bends, it's because the fairy queen is passing by and it's bowing to her. So when your flower bends over, and it gets these lovely little bell-shaped flowers on a stalk. And inside the foxglove, there are all of these markings that are like black and white and kind of modeled in there and almost looks like some sort of mystical writing. The term foxglove comes from the fact that foxes and fairies have a long-standing relationship. And the foxes would actually they could slip the little, the fairies gave, the story is the fairies gave the foxes foxglove. And you put the little bell caps of the flowers on each of on the 4 feet of the fox. And then foxes can slip undetected into the chicken coop or the barnyard or the garden or wherever they're trying to steal their food for the night. And you can also, the foxes have the ability to like sound the bells of the foxglove at a frequency that only other foxes can hear in case like the farmer's coming out. So that's pretty delightful. Yeah, right? I mean, this is like so amazing. And then foxes, this is really prevalent. It's prevalent in British folklore. It's really prevalent in Scandinavian and Nordic folklore. Foxes are super sacred in like Finland and Norway. And it's actually the aurora borealis is called foxfire because it's said that it comes from beautiful northern lights come from the tail of a mystical fox that flies across the sky. And so if you look that up, if you do a Google image search of like foxes, foxfire, northern lights, you'll get all these artist renderings that are really beautiful of like this magical fox tail that's coming across the sky, creating the aurora borealis. So like, that's one of my favorite, it's already such a beautiful plant. It has this life-saving medicine in it. And all parts of it have this medicine. And on top of it all, it has this incredible connection to the fairy kingdom. So,
I like that. Yeah. I mean, it does seem like, because as I mentioned earlier about how, gardens, the force, it just breathes life. And I can see where we can have all these anomalous, entities and phenomenon just going around where energy is, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, if you want to believe in the possibility of the paranormal, look no further than the plant kingdom or the ocean. And you will see some sort of bizarre thing discovered that we'd never heard of before that probably contains some kind of powerful medicine. So the belief in the unknown, the idea that we know everything, is proven directly wrong by the natural world, right? Like constantly. So, right. And I think that that there's a similarity in the appeal or the appeal of the supernatural world. Like they are part of that supernatural world, and they actually kind of straddle the worlds in many ways. If you think of plants like that, they straddle the world of humans and the unknown, the supernatural. Like they are the conduits for some of those supernatural creatures, werewolves, and the vampire history is actually totally directly what we think of as vampires is directly influenced by two specific plants. One of them you'll probably guess.
Garlic.
Yeah.
Right.
And garlic, of course, has tons of antibacterial and antiviral, and even they've even studied it like anti-HIV. It's got really, really powerful constituents in it. And, back when there weren't medical journals and folk wisdom was how you treated ailments, and ailments were also considered evil entities, it just makes sense that, if you're really sick, it could be because a vampire bit you. We're going to give you garlic, or we're going to try and ward off this illness. I mean, I remember my mom giving us whole cloves of garlic when everyone at school was getting sick, just chomping down that garlic. So, of course, there's that relationship with garlic being anti-evil, right? The evil being today what we might consider more of a disease.
Yes.
And
so back in the day, then, really quickly, disease and illness was associated with evil, or
frequently, it was considered, people didn't have any medical knowledge. It wasn't really until the 1600s when they started operating on corpses that they really started developing. So the body snatchers came into fashion. They didn't really see it. You just thought this was going to be about gardening, but we're going to get into vampires, body snatching. We're going to varlify this. Don't worry. So that is also true. I mean, you see that also. I discovered that frequently when I was researching my book, Fairies, Pukas, and Changelings. And you'll see that in like movies and stuff where some like the baby is sick or deformed, and everyone thinks it has to do with someone made a bad deal with the fairies or the devil or whomever. Which you have to take then those stories with a grain of salt, knowing we know so much more about like the development of a fetus and things like that now, so in the book, actually, the excerpt for that chapter, so the way it's arranged is each chapter has a collection of plants that would likely appear in the garden at hand. And garlic's in the cottage garden, of course. But and then I'll tell you, I tell you the common names, I tell you the botanical name, and then I tell you the medicinal properties and the magical properties. And then I get into the lore. And so with garlic, of course, like we have all of this lore associated with vampires and it being an antidote to werewolves and vampires. So I have in the story in that is actually an excerpt from Dracula. And it's the part where Van Helsing is, who's Dutch, right? So he's like calling for these flowers to come over from this hothouse over in the Netherlands or in Holland. And he makes, so what I think when we think of in modern movies, you'll see like a wreath of garlic cloves.
Yes.
Or like a braid of garlic cloves. But actually in the story, it's garlic flowers. So garlic flowers, they're related to onions and allium and chives. They're all in the same family. And they get beautiful white flowers, little bell flowers that pop up. And so what he does is, Lucy, she's like, obviously dying of being attacked by the vampire. So he brings these flowers in. And so there's this whole, in Lucy's diary, she talks about these curious flowers that Van Helsing has brought her and what a strange smell they have. And what he actually does is he weaves a wreath for her and places it around her windowsill, but it's of the whole plant and the flowers. And he puts a bouquet of these. They smell really funny, right? They smell like garlic, but not quite. There's all kinds of wild garlic. It grows all over in almost every I would say in the northern hemisphere, there's a wild garlic that's indigenous to the United States, different wild garlics, different to different places in the United States and Canada and England. Ireland has its own wild garlic, and a lot of, Stoker was Irish. So there's a lot of vampire mythology in Ireland as it is. So it was considered this antidote. but I just really liked that it was the flower and not quite like what you're thinking as the, like, wearing a wreath of garlic. But it just ties directly in with the idea that you could ward off illness or whatever this evil might be. It makes sense that it would also be warding off a vampire, right?
Yes, and of course we all remember from that story where it was always the housekeeper came in and removed the garlic from around the windows and took the vases
Yeah, because they
out
smelled funny.
and took it off around her neck, right? And then lo and
And guess what
behold,
happened?
yes, she became a part of the undead,
Yep.
And really it was funny though, because, well, not funny, but when you watch the movie and read the books, it was working. I mean, there was no trouble
Working.
from good old Dracula, right?
Yeah, it was working. It was warding him off. Yeah. He was, I think, coming outside her window, but he couldn't get in. Yeah, it was working. So, and then speaking of that, the other plant that has a huge influence on what we think of today as vampires, like Nosferatu, is actually corn. So yeah, it's kind of a curious story. So corn is indigenous to North America and has been grown as a major food crop. I mean, the Maya were cultivating it thousands and thousands of years ago from basically what looked like a grass. And they really perfected some horticultural practices, 6,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago. So one of the things with corn, and this is how it's prepared traditionally in indigenous cultures, and a lot of the seeds that ended up back in Europe came from the East Coast, right? So like Cherokee specifically. They have a long-standing history with corn. When you cook corn, you basically have to kind of like break it down. So in indigenous wisdom, you would use ash. You can also use a form of lime, and but they would frequently, the Cherokee have it's like a burnt piece of some kind of wood. It might even be an ash tree, and this is mixed in with the corn as you're cooking it, and you're making, you're cooking it down into like a hominy mash, or you're making like cakes out of it, or whatever. So what that does is it actually breaks down the corn so that it releases some of its vital nutrients, specifically niacin. So we got 1400s, 1500s, colonizers have come over. They go back to Europe, and especially in Italy, which is a lovely Mediterranean climate, and is historically a much poorer country in the European countries. Corn becomes incredibly popular. You can grow it really fast. You can harvest it really fast. I mean, you've seen that, right? We're in the Midwest. Corn's ready in like 3 months.
And
and then you have this massive food source. But the indigenous wisdom was ignored. And so repeatedly people were cooking down corn, and it was a filling meal. So if you were poor and you could like feed your whole family, basically polenta, you were set, right? It was like, okay, well, what was happening is that there became an epidemic because they weren't using that ash or the lime to break down the barrier to release the niacin. A disease formed called pelagra. And pelagra is a niacin deficiency, and the symptoms are sensitivity to sunlight, anger, or mania, extreme hallucinations, and an extremely pale color.
Oh, wow.
So it directly led to there was a vampire craze in Italy during this time. And so, of course, that was based on other folklore, but they were seeing people basically becoming living vampires before their eyes as this disease affected them. And if you even look it up, there are some very old images describing, pelagra, and it looks like Nosferatu, sunken cheeks.
Yeah.
So Stoker, of course, knows all of this. He's got all of his, lore from Romania and the Carpathian Mountains and all of the like folklore. And I also found out that there was a very influential Scottish female, Scottish woman who wrote about specifically Transylvanian folklore, which would have been was published in the late 1700s or the late 1700s, early 1800s. So Stoker would have had access to this. So he had all of that folklore. Of course, we know the influence of Vlad the Impaler being kind of the influence for Vlad Dracul. But then you also have the history of vampires and what they look like and how they transformed. And, so all of those things kind of fed in together because Dracula was so influential on what we think of as a vampire today and still is.
Yeah.
So corn, your humble corn on the cob.
Corn, and you're right about the corn. I could make a meal on the sweet corn with butter. One of my favorite.
Barely cooked, right? Just flash in the boiling water, and you're good.
No, right. I don't overdo it. I like it nice and juicy because you can overdo it. Believe it or not.
And then it's chewy and no one wants it. Yeah.
And usually toward the end of the year when I've got my last harvest, my brother's got a much bigger yard than I do. Mine's sizable, but he's got a nice big fire pit. And we do like the old Milwaukee commercial used to be. I remember that the beer and it was the lobster fishermen on the beach. So we make a big pit and we all save up our money throughout the year because it's not cheap. We get the crab, right? Throw it in the vat with the corn, pull that corn out, and just sit there with the case of Old Milwaukee.
You gotta have something to wash it down.
The commercial, right. Not that I recommend it.
No, but you gotta have a nice light Pilsner to wash it down.
Yeah,
Summertime.
Yeah. So that's
well. So the
fun.
Next time you eat corn, think of vampires. It's like that was a really fun chapter to write because there's a lot of images when you're researching it, and it's pretty fascinating.
No, it is. You're right up my alley with the vampires, all that stuff, and the corn. And one of before I forget the garlic. Though I tell you, I use a lot of garlic. Not where I'm like garlic breath all the time, but I add a little garlic in everything, and I especially like the garlic cloves. I'll stick it in a steak, and sometimes I overdo it, but it's like anything else, practice, trial and error.
Yeah.
But
you should invite me over for dinner because that sounds great.
No, it's pretty good. It's real good. I'll do it one day. Yeah. In fact, my doctor about 3 years ago told me garlic, try to add garlic, a little bit of garlic every day to whatever you eat, And I'm like, so I've been doing it. And I don't know if I could tell a difference, but what you brought about today, I knew about prior. And
good for the heart.
Yeah. And doesn't corn have someone mentioned they say corn didn't have any nutrients. Does it have silk or something? Silkweed or something?
Corn has tons of nutrients. It's just not all of them are unlocked. And you don't have to, you can just steam your corn and you'll still get, I think corn has, let's see, because I probably put exactly what corn has in the book. It's got vitamin C. It's got niacin. Okay. Also look at the illustration of the corn. I've never seen a more beautiful corn illustration.
That is pretty cool.
It's pretty nice. Okay, I think I need my my glasses though, because I'm an old lady now. So
the old cheaters, eh?
Okay, so what do we got here? Yes, corn contains protein, vitamins A, C, and B, antioxidants, and fiber, all essentials for a balanced diet and healthy nutrition. Unprocessed corn is considered a healthy carbohydrate that can aid in digestion, help reduce inflammation, and even lower cholesterol. An important traditional medicine, this is what you were talking about, an important traditional medicine in many cultures is the use of corn silk, also known as stigma matis, to treat urinary infections, overactive bladder, kidney stones, edema, and bedwetting. Corn silk is made from the stigmas, a yellow thread-like strand from female flowers of maize. It contains iron, potassium, and zinc, among other minerals. I can't tell you how much fun I had reading I read so many medical reports, and it was delightful because I would research the folklore, and then I would research, or I'd be researching them simultaneously. And it was so interesting how many of those medical journals draw on, especially with plants, they'll draw on some sort of local wisdom, right? They'll be like, okay, so this is traditionally used in this culture. Let's figure out what is happening on a molecular level and see if we can replicate that in a test study. And it's absolutely fascinating. I just like, that's why it took so long to write it, because there was just, and you kind of compile the different, all the different studies, and so it's really a miracle plant.
It is. I'm learning new things every day. Great show. Varla Ventura, I got her book pinned at the top of the chat room. So for those that are interested, just go click it on, take you right to Amazon and check it out. I can't wait to get my copy, Varla.
Yeah,
and I will.
I know you were supposed to get it before the show, so
yeah, well,
I'll follow up on that.
Well, that's okay. Something to look forward to when I'm out gardening.
Oh yeah, you can read it in the garden. And it's hardcover, so you can take it outside and it'll be pretty sturdy.
And I like that gold.
So nice. And you know what else? Just to plug it one more time.
Yeah,
it's only $20.
See,
and it weighs like 2 pounds.
And
so
288 pages too.
Yes, it's a hefty book for $20.
Hey, for $20, that's a great deal. You can find books for $35, $40.
Yeah. Hardcovers are so expensive, and sometimes I just can't take it. I have to have the hardcover of something. I mean, you get a hardcover novel like Stephen King's new collection of short stories. I paid $40 for that.
Yeah,
I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
but like that's a treat. It's a treat.
Speaking of Stephen King, I cannot get through the book It. I just can't.
Oh, really? I read that when I was a teenager. I should reread it.
Well, I had it way years ago.
It gets kind of confusing when he starts to explain what it is, and it's this sort of like strange Cthulhu, like Lovecraftian spider creature. It does get a little confusing in that part. That's a very thick part of the book. And up until then, everything's very character driven. And there's these really interesting characters, like the main character who lost his kid and stuff, or his kid brother. And then it gets to that part and you're just like, huh?
I always, and there's way more characters in the book than there is in the TV show or the movie. I always quit. It's not because I'm scared, but I always end up reading right around the part where the guy skins himself in the bathtub.
I know. I mean, I honestly, I read Stephen King at such a young age. I saw The Shining when I was like 3. I'm not kidding.
Well, listen to this one, The Shining. So I wasn't of age to get into the R-rated movies, but just old enough where mom and dad would drop me and my friends off, or it was my brother, at the movies by ourselves. We finally go by ourselves. Mm-hmm. So me and my brother, very, craftily, it was the movie Airplane, I think, coming out.
Yeah.
Which
you buy a ticket to a comedy or a Flash Gordon or something like that.
Which, by the way, is a hilarious movie. Didn't happen to see Airplane, though, because we knew that The Shining was playing, and it only started like 8 minutes after. So it's perfect.
In there.
So we went into the airplane, and then we get out. It was like a matinee. Now, a lot of people assume it might be and of course, we're petrified because we're sneaking into an R-rated movie.
Yeah. And it's a scary movie.
Yeah, we got in there, and then we got in, and we had like almost a front row seat. We're in there watching it. Very scary. And the thing that scared me the most, of course, the girls on the bikes, red rum.
Yeah, the twins.
And then the beautiful woman in the bathtub.
Okay, listen, I've got a story about that specific scene. Okay, so I'm little. It's on HBO or something, and I'm like, I can't have been more than 4 because I wasn't in school yet. So I'm 3-4 years old, and The Shining's on. It's showing on HBO. And we're watching it. My sister and I were watching it with our parents, and it gets to that scene, the bathtub scene. So he goes into the suite, and it's a beautiful woman. And so my mom, because the woman's naked and he's starting to like make out with her, or whatever, my mom covers my eyes because it's a sex scene, right?
Right.
But she covers my eyes like this, so I can like kind of see through, right? But then the thing is she sort of takes them away. as the woman transforms into this horrific corpse and is this laughing corpse of an old lady laughing in the bathtub. So that was okay for me to see, but I couldn't see the beautiful naked lady.
Yeah.
Seriously, traumatized. I think that was a moment that really formed me.
Oh, yes.
But
That
you know
was.
what? I have to say, like, that movie is really scary,
It is.
but the book, and I don't say this lightly because I think that that's one of the best horror movies ever made.
Yeah.
The book is scarier.
Really.
It's not really long. It's not one of his like really, really long stories because I do better with Stephen King's short stories. I think he's a genius short story writer. But in the book, one of the things that's the scariest is, you know how they go in the maze?
Yes.
Okay, so in the book, it's not a maze. It's topiary hedge animals, and they move closer and closer to the hotel, and it's really scary. It's really scary. Again, there's a plant story, right?
Yeah, and again, it's a book that'll probably you talked me into getting, which will sit over there. I
No.
used to be a
yeah.
voracious reader as a kid, like between like 10 and even late teens, early 20s, because I always had time, And I know it's an excuse. We can always make time for 1 hour a day. I get it. But there's also 1 hour a day for this, that, and the other. But yeah, I love collecting them anyway, just to have them,
In more recent years, I've also gotten a little bit more into audiobooks.
Yeah.
I find that I don't. So this is what I do with audiobooks. I don't find like a book I really want to read and listen to it on audio. What I do is I listen to a book that I've read before.
Yeah.
And I know like there's a real scary Audible version of Dracula with Tim Curry and Alan Cummings. And it's like just the way they read it. I listen to it falling asleep or in the garden or whatever, walking. And it also does something for me as a writer. It kind of, when I listen to a book, I can't always follow the plot like I would if I'm reading it, but I pick up on the structure or the phrasing that the person uses to describe a scene, the descriptive quality. And I find that I'll hang on to certain things. So I kind of use it almost as like a writing tool and a relaxation tool. But I like to listen to books that I already am familiar with, because then I'm not like, what just happened? I'm actually able to like just dip in and out of the story as I space out and do something else, right? Because that's that's always a problem.
I got to tell you a quick story. I was listening to Bram Stoker's Dracula. I was on a YouTube channel, audio version, and it was on my phone, and they have super chat and stuff like that, that's on it, like most monetized shows have. But so I had the phone was kind of like on my chest, and I'm just listening to it. It was a very good adaptation. And I ended up falling asleep, and they went through like 20 chapters.
Yeah.
For 8 hours. And I wake up though, and I can't find. Hey, listen, I'm looking for my phone because I must have been moving around and I knocked the phone off my shoulder. And you know what happened? And my phone, where it hit, it kept clicking the super chat button. And I ended up with a bill for $180.
Oh no!
Yeah. So everybody listening, thank you for the super chats. But hey, listen. If you fall asleep watching the show, put your phone somewhere else.
Don't put it on your chest.
$180 and you can't get that money back. So the guy goes, wow. And I get a comment from the guy, wow, thank you so much for your awesome generosity. I'm like, dude, I just found your channel, but I'm not even a subscriber. I just happen to listen.
Oh my God. That's funny.
But anyway, hey, before we move on, there's a couple questions really briefly on the plans that I didn't get all your guys' questions. I can't read them all, you guys, as I'm moving through, but Little Patty asks, Varla, what can you tell me about the wild lettuce?
Oh, yeah. So I actually almost had a whole chapter that was just going to be greens. And in the end, a couple of what were going to go in that chapter kind of had their own breakout sessions. One of them was cabbage, surprising number of stories about cabbage. And the other is a plant called rampion, which I can talk about in a second. But I do have a little tidbit about wild lettuce in here. Let me just find it because it actually has one of the reasons lettuce, it didn't have as many stories about it, but it has a ton of like medicinal properties. So I found that very interesting. Let's see. There's turnip, pumpkin going backwards. Will be after. Lettuce would be after. Oh, wait, it's in the cabbage section, actually. I put it in the cabbage section. So forgive me for a second here, and we'll get to the wild lettuce. And cabbages and lettuce both, in terms of folklore, there's quite a bit about like harvesting a head of cabbage under a full moon, and the shape of it and the size of it, or the size of its like leaves can influence who your true love will be. So I'm just looking for this little bit about the wild lettuce because I know I had it in there. Okay, so it comes from Culpeper's Herbal, Nicholas Culpeper's Complete Herbal, and that's like this really fantastic, super old resource that has to do with all manner of herbs. It was written in the 1600s. It's available for free on many different places, including Gutenberg. So wild lettuce, so some similar things as with cabbage. It's magically equivalent of like prosperity. If you think of like a leaf of lettuce, like money, it's abundance.
Sure.
But it also has a lot of vitamins C and K, and is very high in potassium. And I don't have a lot of I have research that's not in the book about wild lettuce, but
Okay.
that's mostly what I know about it off the top of my head.
Okay.
And then,
Andres.
oh
Okay.
yeah, and then pumpkin. Yeah.
What about the pumpkin?
So pumpkin, so you would think that the story that I would include about pumpkin would be Cinderella, but that's not the case at all, because pumpkins are, again, indigenous to the United States. And so the original story of Cinderella does not have a pumpkin. It actually has a different plant at its center, and that's the hazel tree. She gets a branch of a hazel tree from her father, plants it on her mother's grave, and that tree grows. And from that tree, that magical tree, the birds drop down her gown and her shoes for each night of the 3 nights of the ball that Cinderella goes to. But pumpkin itself is, of course, pumpkin's in here because that's one of my favorite plants. That's my favorite plant to grow. If you've never grown pumpkin,
You need a lot of area, don't you, for that? They tend to
yes,
grow
but
all
if you've never grown pumpkin, I have a great recommendation, and that is to grow the little baby boo pumpkins, those little tiny pumpkins,
Okay.
because they don't need as much space. You can vertical garden pumpkins. So I've been doing that, and I actually have this like landscape plan right now that involves pumpkin arches so that you just can like sit underneath the pumpkins. So you can vertical grow them, and that gives you more space. The challenge I've found with vertical growing pumpkins is getting them to grow. So my pumpkins all like to grow, let me think, okay. So my pumpkins all like to grow west to east. They just, in my garden, and sometimes east to west, but pretty much always west to east. And I put my pumpkin arches in so that they would grow north to south, and it didn't work. I couldn't get them to go up and over. So this year I'm reconfiguring my pumpkin arches. But the other thing is they don't take as long to fruit, little tiny pumpkins. So if you have a shorter growing season, you live in a northern climate, for example, you can plant them and they'll start to produce fruit in about 60 days. Also, just on the gardening front, pumpkins only produce the fruit from the female flowers, and you'll probably get 10 male flowers to every female flower. So your best bet is to plant plants around your pumpkin patch that attract bees, so that you're like something really prolific, like a salvia or something like that just gets tons of flowers. So you're attracting bees, and then they're more likely to pollinate. You can hand pollinate. And the female flowers look like a little clawed hand inside. That's how you can tell. And that's what forms the pumpkin. But as far as some of the medicinal properties of pumpkins, they're used to treat gastrointestinal disease, aid digestion, treat intestinal parasites, wounds, heart disease, urinary tract infections, and even cancer. The flowers are used in wound treatment and to treat male infertility. Pumpkin is that's probably because of all the male flowers, huh?
Yeah, right.
And like squash blossoms are delicacy that are widely eaten, especially like you go to Mexico and you get like these amazing quesadillas with like squash blossoms in them. Pumpkin is also used in pet care, treating digestive disorders in dogs and cats, and as an anti-parasite. And I remember actually my mom saving the pumpkin seeds, roasting them with garlic, and feeding them to our dogs to prevent heartworm. As far as the lore goes, I mean, I think you've got everything, right? You've got the Great Pumpkin, Linus's Great Pumpkin Patch. You do have the Cinderella, the retelling of the Cinderella, where the magical pumpkins, they look like magical fruits. And let's see, what do we have for magical properties? We've got, from one pumpkin, there are hundreds of seeds. So therefore, pumpkins are an excellent plant to use in spells for prosperity and fertility. Carving them into lanterns, of course, they're now used to sort of trick the devil or goblins and ghouls away. But of course, again, pumpkins are indigenous to the United States. Halloween began in Ireland. So before there were pumpkins, they carved turnips and they carved them as lanterns to sort of like light the way. There's still a tradition today, and you can do this yourself at Halloween. You have a big bonfire on Halloween night or around Samhain. And from that bonfire, it's almost like, I mean, in the Celtic religion, that's New Year's. That's actually when the year ends and begins again. And so you have a big bonfire, and you take a coal from that bonfire, you put it in your lantern, your jack-o'-lantern, and you use that to light a fire in your own home, assuming you have a fireplace, right?
Yeah, right.
But you use that to light, you bring it into your own home to ensure safety as you go into the darkest part of the year. So, so there's a few tidbits about pumpkins there.
There's a few tidbits.
Is that enough?
Yeah, get the book for more.
Yeah.
Sparky,
book for more recipes. Yeah.
Sparky's Paranormal and Outdoors. Varla, steaming or cooking to super soft. Does that allow get more stuffs out of the corn?
I like the way you phrase that.
Yeah.
Get more stuffs out of the corn. So the real secret to unlocking all of the nutrients from the corn is to add lime or ash if you're cooking it down. You still get the vitamin A and the vitamin K and the vitamin C from it if you're eating it raw. You'll still get that, right? Like fresh off the cob. So it's not that you won't get, it's not that you're going to get pelagra, because the other thing is, keep in mind, right? We now get niacin from a lot of other sources. What the problem with it is that was people's only source of food. It was their primary source of food, and they were therefore nutrient deficient. Okay. So there's a couple different ways to get it. You actually put like burnt wood into your like stew pot as you're cooking it down, if you're trying to make a hominy. And actually, if you do a Google search, and I believe you can find it on YouTube. Actually, if you look on YouTube, you can search for I think it was there's this Gordon Ramsay show where he travels around. It's a travel show. Yeah. And he travels around the world and learns about local ingredients from a local chef. And one of them, he goes to, I want to say he's in South Carolina. I can't remember off the top of my head, but he goes and he meets this Cherokee woman, and she shows him the way to cook corn down. Okay. And if you want to see the actual process or a way to do it, I would highly recommend looking for that or just searching that up, because I'm not, I don't have a recipe for that. I just know the facts. I hate cooking, actually. I eat everything raw.
Oh, vegetables? Yeah. You like your vegetables raw?
I like most things raw, yeah.
Yeah. Well, my steak, though, close to raw. I like my steak medium rare.
You like it running
I like a little blood in there. A little blood. Yeah. I'll go figure, right? Eric Fry, is wild lettuce related to the devil's lettuce?
Okay, so I'm just going to do a really quick look up here, because I believe devil's lettuce is a common name for a nettle. That is what is popping into my head. So here's the main issue with common names, and I include common names in my book, but I always include the botanical name. The main issue with common names is that now we have plants from all over the world growing all over the world, right? And so anything that stings or is bitter is usually or poisons you is often gets the devil title to it.
Sure.
But I think devil's lettuce, so that's a common name for probably quite a few things, but I think devil's lettuce, in my memory, is actually one of the common names for nettles. And the great thing about nettles, which I talk about, I have thistle in my book. Let's see
Hey,
what
Varla, while you
Yeah.
go on, I do that dog thing.
Yeah, go do the dog thing. Devil's lettuce. Well, of course, the internet says devil's lettuce is marijuana. So I think devil's lettuce is one of those terms that is used for a lot of different plants. But devil's lettuce is also a term for stinging nettle. And interestingly, stinging nettle is a really, really great medicinal plant. Can be used to increase blood flow. Thistles and nettles, the root of those are compounded and dried and compounded down into something that you can take to detoxify your liver. You can boil them and make a tea. It's really good for your circulation and things like that. But it's not something that you would necessarily enjoy touching or harvesting or like chewing on, right? Because it has all those tiny little things. So, but yes, devil's lettuce is also slang for marijuana. It's slang for, apparently, according to the internet, it's also slang for money. So, all kinds of things. I'm going to pop over here to the, oh, I hear you coming back.
I'm
I was
back.
just going to
Yeah,
see it. Yeah.
I told you it'd only take that.
Yeah, that's quick.
So
Yeah.
you had another little pamphlet you were showing me earlier.
Oh,
It seemed
yes.
very interesting. Why don't you go ahead?
Indeed. This is Shadowzine. So some people may be familiar with Jeff Belanger's work. He's been working in the paranormal for 20-something years. He's a wonderful writer, public speaker. And a couple of months ago, he launched something called Shadowzine. And basically, he wanted to just start publishing sort of long form stories with full editorial publishing control. So he wrote the first one, which was about the Bridgewater Triangle in Massachusetts. The second one was written by Richard Estep, who's a wonderful writer, and he wrote about ghosts and creatures of Cornwall, England. And it's lovely. It's got mermaids and ghosts and haunted castles and everything.
Next time you're out, we gotta do the mermaid show again. That was
fantastic. Mermaid show is a great summer show.
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially in the Great Lakes area.
Yeah. Well, you can totally segue into like all of the sea creatures and lake creatures and yes. And then so for issue number 3, I think he's on issue 4 now, but issue number 3 of Shadowzine, I wrote, and it's called Mark Twain's Ouija Mystery. Ooh. And this is the story of a woman named Emily Grant Hutchings, who in 1916 was a regular user of Ouija boards and spirit boards and attending seances. And during one of these, the medium made contact with a spirit who claimed to be the ghost of Samuel Clemens, aka Mark Twain. And this progressed into a relationship because supposedly the spirit kept asking for Emily, calling her that Hannibal girl. She was born in Hannibal, Missouri, which is also where Twain was from. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, this is 6 years. He died in, I think, 1910. So this is 6 years after he's died. So she embarks on this rather extravagant year-long project in which she and the medium, using a Ouija board, transcribe painstakingly, one letter at a time, 2 short stories and a novel that are said to have been written by Twain's ghost. And there was always a secretary present to kind of keep track of the words. And she would supposedly do very light editing. In 1917, she found a publisher for the novel. It's called Jap Haron, Jap being short for the main character's name, which was Jasper. And it's the story of like this kind of young guy who comes into town and starts apprenticing at a newspaper. And it's a very like Twain-like story. So unknown to Emily during that time, one of the grand poobahs of the Society for Cyclical Research started sending letters to Clemens' daughter, Clara, Twain's daughter, Clara, asking her to confirm certain details that were coming out of these seances. And he did a series of these letters, and to the point that it really irritated Clara. So Emily finds a publisher, this man named Mitchell Kennerly, who is based in New York, and he was a publisher of esoteric ephemera, and he publishes it, and it's a full-length novel. It's like a real big old book. And the Clemens and the Harper and Brothers, who are the publishers of Twain, got wind of it and entered into a lawsuit, basically a cease and desist for Kennerly, saying that not that Twain's ghost couldn't have done this, but that they own Twain. They created Mark Twain, not Samuel Clemens, the pen name Mark Twain. And so it became a copyright infringement lawsuit that went all the way up to the Supreme Court. Meanwhile, daughter's totally in on it. She gets all the royalties, and she's irritated about this guy harassing her about her dead father, right? Like years after he's passed. You can only imagine. And so in the end, the lawsuit, there's all these fabulous articles. Jeff did this incredible job designing it. So we have like images. That's Clara and her father. That's the book itself. He and his friend Frank Grace, who's a wonderful photographer, went to the Salem Witchboard Museum and photographed the book that was in the private collection of John, the owner there. But there's all these articles where they're debating. There's some quote that's like, the existence of life after death is not going to be debated by psychics and mediums today. It will be debated by lawyers. And there was even talk of bringing in a board to see if she could make contact to see. But in the end, they ended up settling out of court with the basically the ruling being that Kennerly had to destroy all copies of the book.
Wow.
Well, Kennerly did not destroy all copies of the book. And there's a few articles out there saying he was a bit of a scamp, or kind of, I like to think of him as a rebel, kind of did his own thing, right? He wasn't intimidated by Harper and Brothers. So we know that there's copies because John has a physical one. There's a facsimile that has been scanned and is available for free on Gutenberg. So there are copies out there. So not all copies were destroyed. And then in the course of researching this, it turns out she's not the only one who wrote a novel or wrote a book claimed to comes from Twain's ghost. There's two other ones. There was one that was published a couple years before hers, but I think it was self-published and no one harassed the daughter. So it must have just kind of gone under the radar. No one cared about it. But this one stood to have some... it was published in 1917, and it stood to have some legs because at that time also there was a resurgence in popularity of the spiritualist movement because of what was going on in history. We were entering into World War I, and so spiritualism was very popular, began in the 1840s, was very popular post-Civil War, mourning, people wanting to getting into spirit photography and trying to make contact. And so there was a resurgence of that in the early teens in the United States. So it was more of a threat to them. And then there's just so much more to the story, but this is available now. You can get it, really, you can only get it either directly from me or possibly Jeff at live events, or you can go to shadowzine.com and you can order it. You can order, there's a fourth one that's out now. I don't have a copy of it, but it's all about Texas hauntings.
Ooh.
And that's Greg Lawson. Yeah. So very cool thing. It's fun to be part of something that's really creative, and you know what it's like to try and get something published. It's hard.
Yeah. It's
hard to get through all those gatekeepers. It's hard to get to an editor, and self-publishing is it was a much stronger choice for people these days, but even that's fraught with some difficulties because you have to know how to format, and you have to, so it's an investment, and writing is hard enough, but then to get somebody to actually publish
and then
buy it on top of that, right?
Yeah, I've been through those avenues, and of course,
Yep.
mine are on Amazon, and I did it all just self-taught, and I know that it could have been a lot better. I didn't hire an editor. I did everything myself.
Yeah, but you
So there's
learn along the way,
yeah,
and
you
that's
learn
what
along the way.
Jeff's done with this. I mean, he has years of writing and editorial experience, and now he's publishing, and so he's collecting he's collecting authors from that he admires in the paranormal community and having them tell one story. So that's why when he asked me to do it, I said, I have the perfect story because I have a story. I've touched on this story before. It's in my paranormal parlor book in a small section, but there's so much more to the story. From how it started to how it ended. And I'd always wanted to actually write it as a full piece. And so he gave me that opportunity to do that. So there's more to the story. I even there's a plant. It ends with a plant.
Of
So
course,
just trying to stay on brand there.
No, well, I do have two more questions to stay on brand that I can't. If I miss some of you guys' questions, I do apologize. Here's one. Sparky again asked, "What is the plant that is secure for stinging nettles?"
Oh,
Stinging nettles.
that always grows near it. I don't really know exactly what plant that is, but I do know that plantain is a plant that takes away the sting of stinging nettles and also like sunburns or wounds.
Yeah.
And plantain, I mean, it grows wild in all of our lawns, and you can just mush it up and put it on there and it'll take the sting away. But there may be another plant or many other plants that do that you're thinking of, but I know plantain does that.
Very good. And final one here, Andres.
White orchid.
What about the white orchid?
So I'm not sure if you're kind of exactly what you are asking about in terms of like the white orchid. There's that whole white like ghost orchid that was at the center of the plot of the Orchid Thief that grows in Florida. So maybe that's what you're thinking of when you think of, because there's hundreds of different kinds of orchids that have white flowers, but the ghost orchid is might be the one you're thinking of, and that has a lot of mystical and magical properties because it's kind of elusive. I mean, orchids in general, in terms of working with orchids for magic, they are not prolific. They're rare, right? They're still perceived as rare, even though we have them more commonly. And so because of that, they sort of have this otherworldly element to them. The flowers are long lasting. I think they make a great addition to any kind of magic where you're really trying to tap into like manifestation.
Okay.
And then of course, well, my favorite orchid, and it's probably your favorite orchid too, Rob, is the lady slipper. It's native to Michigan. It's native to Minnesota. It's native to all over the United States. It has a beautiful, beautiful flower. It looks like something out of Alice in Wonderland's garden. And they grow wild in the forests where we live.
Well, I gotta, what I gotta look.
Do you have a different favorite orchid? Oh, wait, actually, my real favorite orchid is the Dracula orchid. Just Google Dracula orchid and you'll see why. It's black and it has these long tendrils that come down and it looks like a bat.
Oh wow!
Fantastic.
Yeah,
it grows in the highlands of the Andes Mountains. It's a highland orchid.
Ooh,
yeah.
Definitely gave me some great ideas to look up. Really, I mean, seriously, I'll have to replay this now.
Listen to it while you're gardening.
Yeah, there you go. Everybody, thanks for coming in. Thanks, Varla. Varla's book, Enchanted Plants, is pinned at the top of the chat room. So if you guys are interested, go check it out. Also, Varla, where can people find you media-wise?
Yeah, so my website is varlaventura.net. And I'm very active on Instagram, probably most active on Instagram as Varla Ventura. At the exact present moment, my Facebook page has been eradicated for reasons I have yet to decipher. So you can't find me there right now, but normally I'm there. And then I just want to say that I in a couple of weeks, so sort of the last 2 weeks of May going into the beginning of June, if anybody is in Massachusetts, check out my website under appearances. I am doing several different talks about enchanted plants at some of the libraries around the kind of greater Boston area. And I'm also doing a Dining with the Dead dinner with Ron Kolick of New England Ghost Chronicles. And I'll be talking about the Emily Grant Hutchings story. So that's starting May 21st, going through June 4th. I'm going on a wild solo book tour. And yeah, please come out and say hi to me. I need, it would be terrible if no one showed up.
Well, you'll get a turnout. Dining with the Dead.
Dining with the Dead.
Yeah, I mean, that's right up my alley.
Oh yeah, and you get like, you pay for the ticket includes you get like a starter, a meal, a dessert, some kind of drink. I think you have to buy alcohol separately, but you should buy alcohol for sure. And then Ron is the host, and then I'm the special guest speaker, and I'll be doing a whole presentation about Emily. So yeah.
Well, again, great show,
Great fun.
Varla. Thanks everybody for coming in. Hit that like button on your way out, of course. Appreciated. Varla, hang on for just 2 minutes after the show, 'cause I gotta get something from you. And then yeah, so once again, thank you for coming on in. I gotta thank everybody for coming in and watching the show this afternoon. I know everybody's busy during the afternoon, so for taking out your time. And all you people that are listening and not in the chat room, thank you as much as well, because you're just as important. It does help us all grow. Hit the like button on your way out, and I will see you guys. Today's Thursday. Friday night, my BMR story time. I don't know if I'm going to do that Friday because I'm putting together the Werewolf Chronicles, which is going to be a 3-part series. I'll be doing Fridays at 6:00. Oh, I can't get that high pitch anymore, Varla. I used to be able to do the werewolf. I can't now. I can do the growling.
You can do the growl. Yeah, you can do the dogman growl, right?
Yeah. It'd be nice. That's a nice song. Yeah. Let's do the dogman growl.
Yeah, that feels like, the next Werewolf of London.
You know, there you go. I love that song as well. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Varla. I'll see you backstage in a minute. All right.
This is the future. Evolution.
The Crossing Realms Conference launches September 19th and 20th and will dock in Richmond, Missouri. This is already being called the event of the year, folks. With an unprecedented list of speakers and special guests, 2 days of cryptids, UFOs, and paranormal presentations, along with a celebrity-filled ghost hunt, meet and greet, gallery reading, vendors, and a film screening. This promises to be both educational and fun. Go to Eventbrite.com to secure your tickets and vendor slots before they are all abducted. They're going fast.